Lots of time. Ah.
But just wanted to say thank you so much. Just repeat a lovely message from our lovely host. Say thank you so much for joining us. My name is Lindsey Kelk. I am an author. I'm going to talk to Andy, who is another author, and about her brilliant new book, The Herd. I have it. Look, product placement. You have one too.
Me too.
Would you believe it?
Visual aid.
I know, it's very good. I don't know if you know this. So I'm going to ask Andy a bunch of questions that I have come up with. And I had many because I read this book over the holidays and, as Andy knows, was obsessed with it because I was texting you to tell you that fact. So I have a bunch of questions, but at the end of this, if you have any questions, we would love for you to put them in the chat box and I will put them to Andy on your behalf. I know it's a lot of pressure. I feel like at any of these things where people are like, have a question at the end, it feels like a lot. So don't feel like you have to have a question, but if you do have a question, usually the more entertaining, the better, honestly. You could ask a question about any of our cats involved. I've seen many cats involved in this evening, so go for it. Or about books, you know, like we're wide open. But anyway, let's move on to the book chat. Andy, tell us about The Herd in your own words.
Great. Well, first off, I just want to say thank you again. Everyone should buy all of Lindsey Kelk's amazing books. She writes amazing and hilarious women's fiction, and she has young adult, is it young adult or chapbooks? A younger, adorable series called
Middle Grade.
Middle grade. Okay, I don't know my terminology of younger things, but anyway, read all of her books. She's fantastic.
Thank you.
So, The Herd, which came out on Tuesday, is a thriller that is set in an all-female co-working space in New York City. And that co-working space is sort of upended when its glamorous and sort of enigmatic founder, Eleanor, goes missing the night of an important company announcement. And so the book is told from the alternating perspective of her two very good friends, who are sisters, who are both trying to uncover the reality of what happened to Eleanor and why she would disappear. And in that process, they're sort of uncovering secrets, facing down their own secrets, and they're sort of risking their friendships, their relationships, their careers, and maybe even their lives. And it's been called a feminist thriller by a lot of people, which I love. And it really goes deep on
the mastermind, or the master of the feminist thriller, I think, is what you'll find. You're the feminist thriller, I believe, is the exact terminology.
Master of the feminist thriller was a term bandied about on the LA Times today, not to brag.
Oh, brag away. If you're going to brag, now is the time. Let's do it.
I don't think I've ever been called a master of anything. So that was very exciting, but it goes really deep on these themes of like consumerist feminism and complex female friendships, and sort of the sky-high standards that we have for high achieving and ambitious and successful women, and what happens when the perfect veneers that they are forced to wear begin to crack.
Very well said. You have preemptively answered many of my questions, so I look forward to you repeating yourself throughout the next 45 minutes. First question, what inspired you to write this book? I feel like that's always the first question, and it's the one we have to ask. What inspired you to write The Herd?
Yeah, several people are mad at you because you just took their question. They were going
I know, I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry.
But no, it's a great question. So I really enjoy setting thrillers inside of an exclusive community in some way that feels sort of close-knit and closed-door and, you know, juicy within juicy as a social milieu, you could say. And obviously for The Lost Night, that was like the warehouse parties of hipster Brooklyn, which for those who don't know, Lindsey and I were friends in Brooklyn in 2009. She might have a little firsthand experience with this. But in this case, I was actually kicking around a few different ideas of like social environments that I could try to capture. And an all-female co-working space was just one of them. And while I was sort of pondering what direction to go, I, out of nowhere, had the idea for the slogan for The Herd, the logo. And it's The Herd, but with the HER always in purple, because it's all about her. And it made me laugh, and it still makes me laugh. And so that was sort of the moment that I was like, I think that was divine inspiration, and this is like the direction to go.
Yeah. What was it about co-working spaces in particular? Was there anything, I've got to ask you, do you have experience of co-working spaces, specifically female-only co-working spaces?
It is a fair question. A lot of people, that same LA Times review today just said it was about the wing. And I was like, interesting, that's news to me. But I'm not a member at any co-working space, but I've been a guest at a number of them, including the wing. And I just realized that it was a really great setting for a thriller because it's so beautiful on the outside, but then it has so much tension sort of inherent in the idea of it, right? To give some examples, it prides itself on being so inclusive. Like from the get-go, these spaces are very like quote unquote woke. And yet they're trying to be inclusive, but they're exclusive by definition. They're clubs, they're hard to get into, there's huge wait lists. And I also thought it was interesting that, we're so excited by the idea of this space that's free from the male gaze. And, the idea is like, we can really just let our hair down and not even be thinking about how men are perceiving us. And like, the patriarchy doesn't apply here. But then I found that for myself, when I was going to be a guest at one of these, I would like pay attention to my outfit and like, make sure my hair and makeup looked good. And then when I was there, I was trying to, be really charismatic and likable to like fit in with all of these spectacular women. And it very much felt like everywhere I looked, every woman was more spectacular than the last.
Yeah.
And so again, I thought like there's just this interesting tension of like, internalized misogyny and messages that we've been getting since we were born about like what it takes to be an acceptable woman in the world and female competition and what you can present versus how you are on the inside. And I just thought that this place that's such a Instagram ideal would be really fun for playing with like dark and deeply messed up and disturbing things.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons I loved your book the first time I read it and the second time, because I just reread it again, which was a delight. And I do recommend that. I know sometimes with thrillers, it's like, how can you reread it? Because you know all the plot twists, but it kind of makes it even more fun because you see the pieces putting themselves together, and you've done that beautifully, I have to say. No, like you really have. But one of the reasons I was so intrigued by it was that when the wing opened in LA, I did become a member. Because so many of my friends in New York had said, oh my God, you must join. It's amazing. You'll love it. And I work from home. I'm a writer. So like, this will be good for me to get outside. I think I went 4 times in the 6 months that I was a member. And then following I'm going to use quotes because this was resolved within the wing community and not largely talked about outside of it. There was a racially charged incident in the LA wing and a lot of members resigned their memberships. And I was one of them because I felt very uncomfortable being there. So the way that you nailed the idea of this exclusive inclusivity was just so on the money and so on the nose. I was really intrigued to see what your experiences were of that, because you pinned that right down. Yeah, it's a weird spot.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing to have these spaces in 2020 that there's just so many different forces at play. And even when you say you want to be for all women, it's like in reality you're for a certain kind of woman. And yet I know that these places, to their credit, are trying to fight back against that and have, scholarship programs and hire, hiring diversity and all that stuff. So it's interesting. Some people are like, do you hate the wing? I think what I like is that you can read the book. If you are a member and you really like stan the wing and you love it, you can read it and like be like, you know what, this place had some problems, but like the women within it had their hearts in the right place and really did love this space. And if you loathe it, you can be on page 3 and be like, oh yeah, like here we go. Cannot wait to see this like burn to the ground.
Organization, right? Any organization is at some point the tipping point happens where it stops being the people that founded it and their beliefs and what they set out to do, and the people that actually take over and become the corporate machine, which again is something we see in The Herd, is when it stops being what it was intended to be, or at least it stops being what we were told it was intended to be and becomes a corporate concern. Which is something you talked about, and I would love to talk about that. The commercialization of feminism. I've got notes, by the way, everyone. I'm being very professional. I have notes. The commercialization of feminism is a huge part of this novel and in your work in general. I know it's something that you care about a lot. What was it in particular that inspired you to bring that into this novel?
I mean, it was sort of baked into the idea from the beginning, because it's such an automatic criticism for co-working spaces like the Wing or the Riveter or the Coven or the Assembly or the Luminary. I like to point out that there are many
there are
of them,
so
and
many,
not just the
so
Wing,
many.
to be clear.
And not only the all women, like all of the
Right.
co-working spaces that have requirements all have
Right.
requirements. So
But I think what's really interesting is that these claims of like, oh, it's too exclusive, it's too bougie, it's like, rife with infighting, all of this sort of, crucible of badness going on in it, like people are not judging the male run co-working spaces the same way, which I think is very interesting. And we, goes back to the themes of us holding women up to much higher standards, and being so eager to see, female entrepreneurs fail, and being so ready to talk about everything they're doing wrong, which anyone who read the New York Times Magazine feature last week on what a nightmare it was to run in to work at the Wing, I just thought there was one line that I was like, my God. The line from the employee was like, they billed it as a feminist, they billed that it was going to be a feminist utopia, but it turned out it was just like any other company that wants to make its money. And I was like, yeah, like, no
like
shit.
a company? Yeah, like a company that wanted to make money?
It's not a nonprofit. Like, of course it was.
Yeah,
who's like so mad that Elon Musk is trying to make money? Like, that is what people do when they run companies. They started.
Elon.
Not to bring Elon into any of it. Let's not go in that direction.
Let's really not. That can be your next book. I mean, he has 1,000 books all in one. It's interesting, isn't it? How because as soon as you label something feminist, it just suddenly becomes held up. It is suddenly held up to 1,000% higher standard than anything else could. So it's difficult because obviously if you're creating an all-women space, you want the label of feminism, but you are going to reject the added pressure that comes with that, which is right. It shouldn't have added pressure with it, but also you're commodifying the term. You're not just saying we are for women, you're profiting off saying we are for women. So it is a really difficult balancing act, which I think is something you handled in here. Is, what does it mean to different people? Who gets their nose put out of joint by that? Like, who's annoyed that you're commodifying feminism? Who's annoyed that you're using the label of feminism from the off? It's such a charged term, right? For thrillers.
Right, exactly. Like lots of rich, fertile soil for tillers, because for thrillers, because I don't have the answers, and tillers too, if that's your day laborer. But I don't have the answer to any of this. I was just trying to pose a lot of questions, and I mean, at the end of the day, my feeling about consumerist feminism is like, if it makes you happy to like buy a T-shirt that says "Feminist AF," like by all means do it. Like, these are not the battles that like we really should be focusing on, and it doesn't make you less of a feminist to do this. But I see why, it like makes a lot of people angry, and then the people who are into it have to defend themselves, and like it's a flashpoint for debates about feminism, as one article called The Wing.
Yes, it is. A lot of the characters in your books, I'm going to paraphrase my own question because my own question is very long. The characters are very complicated. They are very complicated women. They are flawed. They have problematic behaviors, some might say. As women, we and all women are largely expected to be nice and likable above all else. That's what we're supposed to be. That's what society has taught us. Our main characteristic has to be, sorry, allergies, not anything else. We have to be nice and likable. You did not go out of your way, to my mind, to make these characters especially nice and likable, but they were still empathetic. How was that in building that into characters? Because that's some complex character work there.
Yeah, it took a while to sort of find the characters and to get to know them, and I discovered them by writing. Like, that's sort of how I get to know both the plot and the themes and the characters. So there was a lot of discovery. But in broad terms, I was hoping for these different, I needed to distinguish them, right? Because otherwise it's just a bunch of names, and especially switching between two narrators who on the surface are very similar. They grew up literally in the same home in the Midwest, and have one's in PR, one's in journalism. They're very similar. And so I needed ways to distinguish them. And so the book is all about ambition. And so my idea was for these different characters, and hopefully this is done subtly enough that you don't notice it as a reader, but they all are sort of representing different approaches that women can take to achieve ambition, like in the right way. So they're all sort of wearing different armor that women can use as their approaches to sort of move up in the world. And I think for women, again, like from the time we're little, we're taught to read the room and to pay attention to how people are reacting to us and reacting to other people, to be very, very socially aware. And so pretty early, we sort of develop our, I keep saying our armor, our masks, our sort of ways to move about the world. And so once I realized that, it was kind of fun to develop these characters. So to give the example of Katie and Hannah, the two sisters who are the dual narrators, and alternates between them. Katie is the younger sister, and she's a journalist, and she's like brash and funny, and she talks without thinking. She can immediately get an entire room full of people laughing, and because of that, like men love her, like people love being around her. She's a little bit of a hot mess, but she's very like fun and funny, and that's sort of her currency, and like making people feel comfortable and making her likable. And then her sister Hannah, her older sister, is the head of PR for the herd, and she is extremely buttoned up, extremely in control. She's always on top of the situation. She's the mother of any group. She's very dependable. Everyone can just come to her, and like she will anticipate everyone's needs before you even realize you have them.
Yeah.
And what was fun with playing with these dual narrators is that I was able to sort of explore how we all have these roles that we play, and we sort of assume that everyone else loves theirs and that we're the one that feels trapped in ours. And so I could go from Katie's perspective of like, God, I wish I was as just like in control and on top of things as Hannah, and she always knows what to do, and I'm such a mess. And then we flip over, you turn the page and get to a Hannah chapter, and Hannah is looking at her little sister, and she resents that she needs to be the one to take care of everything. And she's jealous that her sister can just so easily endear herself to new people and make people laugh. And so when you're like playing with their interiority, it allows you to both like express these roles that they're playing, but then also play with the idea of, all the masks that we're playing. And so there's those two. Then there's Nikki, their good friend, who's like the bohemian, like dancing in a mumblecore movie. And then there's Eleanor, who is like the ultimate woman, who is like so good at everything. And so they all have different approaches for sort of making people love them. And to someone they're interacting with, that would probably make them quite likable. But it was really important for me in the writing to go beyond that and to really show their vulnerability, show their shame, show their fears, show their insecurity. And so when you read them, they're not all that likable. And then certainly as sort of they become more and more compressed in this crucible, until they get to the breaking point, like bad behavior comes out when that mask begins to crack.
Mm-hmm. No, it's fascinating to me. As you mentioned, I write women's fiction, and it's largely rom-coms, and have done so for 10 years. And the biggest comment that comes back every single time on every first draft is always, could she be more likable? Could she be more likable? Could she be more relatable, more likable? And I find it so fascinating that is coming from publishing down. And I talk to a lot of writers who get the same feedback across genre, not just, rom-com in particular. Obviously you want your lead to be likable. I don't want people to be like, no. But I find it really interesting that it's coming from the top down to authors, and authors are the ones that are pushing back on saying, maybe she's not super likable. It's
right.
Did you get a lot of support from your publisher on your editor on their characters?
I would say on this one, there were a few rounds of really nailing the characters and really distinguishing them, but I was lucky because my editor wasn't pushing me too hard to make them likable, but rather to make them interesting and distinct. And I think the two narrators are intelligent women, so they're quite funny, because I think smart women are funny. And so they have sort of that, which is hopefully endearing as you read. And of course, like, there are some readers out in the world who for some reason tag me in their reviews who do find them very unlikable, and as a result hate the book. But to me, two things. One, I would much rather a character be interesting and have agency than be likable. that whole discussion, male characters don't need to be adorable and lovable for us to follow them on their journey. But then also the idea, some people say, oh, this can't be a feminist thriller because these women like act awful at times. And I'm sort of like, the idea that women need to be nothing but kind and magnanimous and wonderful to one another all the time and hold hands and sing kumbaya for a book to be feminist is actually quite sexist.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to write characters that make people a little bit uncomfortable because they are speaking some kind of truth that we as women experience but are not supposed to say and are not allowed to say. And that was sort of my like guiding light for these characters.
Yeah. Nice. We talked about it a little bit, or you talked about it a little bit, I've done nothing. But there's a lot of talk in the herd about success and ambition, both failed and realized, and how that affects women, how they've internalized it and how they've externalized it. What was it in particular? Was there a moment that became a key theme for you?
That's an interesting question. When did ambition? I mean, I think it was again sort of baked into the idea from the start, because what brings all these women together in this space is that they're two things. They're very ambitious. You don't, pay $300 a month for this space if you're not really serious about what you're working on, hopefully. But they also are social. Like they're social creatures, because these are people by definition who don't need to be in an office space. They're not meeting with true coworkers. They don't have to show up at a desk every day. And yet they're going to this space for the benefit of the other women and for being inspired by them. And I think, I don't know, certainly in my own life, here's another unlikable thing I'm going to say, but like for me, the line between inspiration and envy is like very, very thin. I can be so happy for a friend, but at the same time, I'm like a little jealous, but then it also pushes me to succeed more. And so I think ambition was sort of a key theme from the start, and it became a lot of fun to play with failed ambition and what it means, and sort of how closely tied ambition is to the appearance of success, or I should say like success. We sort of mark it by like, how does it look? And it becomes very, very important to these women to sort of maintain the appearance that everything is great and nothing is wrong. And that is me being successful. That is how I signal success.
Yeah. That was really interesting to me, and the ambition side of it, because from the outset, if you were to write very rough character sketches of all of your characters, you would say Eleanor is the ambitious one, and maybe Hannah is the ambitious one out of her and Katie, and then you have Katie, and then Mickey would be the least ambitious. But then when you look at them from a broader spectrum, because obviously everything is a spectrum, actually they are all incredibly ambitious, just in very different ways. And Katie carries, I'm telling you about your own book and I hate myself for it.
I love it.
Have been drinking. Like we're a cocktail in, ladies. I loved that Katie's ambition, obviously she feels so pushed to succeed. Maybe we don't know what her genuine scope of her ambition is, but she just feels like she has to keep achieving. Eleanor's ambition drives her down a really dark path. Hannah's ambition has driven her to be very lonely in her life. Mickey's ambition drives her to all kinds of wacky and wonderful adventures. I just thought I feel like we as women are always pushed to make the ambitious character and have that be the one person, and that's one person's defining role. And she's usually the unlikable character, like looking all the way back to something like Working Girl, it's like, oh, like the boss character, she's the bitch. But in the reality, everyone has a level of ambition. And I thought that was really interesting how it was shown, and it was never hidden. Like everyone was allowed to have their own ambitions.
Yeah, everyone has a lot of naked ambition, and I haven't really thought about it quite this way, but actually in each case their ambition and their need to appear successful was sort of what led to their downfall, and like gave them all sorts of problems, right? Because even Katie, the little sister, who we think of as sort of the most, silly and goofy and least ambitious, she's full of shame because she just has moved back to New York after a failed book year that she was supposed to be spending book writing in Michigan, and it all blew up in her face. And so she's scrambling for a new way to sort of keep up appearances, and that's what leads her into all sorts of problems as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's Shakespearean in its levels of ambition. Let's go with that. You're the master of the feminist thriller and Shakespearean in your levels of ambition. I'm going to talk a little bit about your writing process, because I'm sure that's something people are interested in. This was your second book. How did writing The Herd differ for you to writing The Lost Night, which was your first book?
For me, it was Sure. Sorry, you blacked out. I lost you
You
for a minute.
too, but we're all here now. It's fine.
We're all good? Okay. So the last night, everyone's on Zoom. This is the problem. The internet can't handle it.
It's true.
The last night was just complete night and day from writing The Herd. When I wrote the last night, I didn't have an agent yet, so I had to write the whole manuscript and work on it on my own and cry and hate it and want to throw it in the trash. And do all those things before I, obtained an agent and an editor and could move forward in a normal capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So this time around, I sold The Herd after I was done with revisions for the last night. I sold The Herd based on the premise in just 2 sample chapters. And that was in September of 2018, the end of September 2018. And the first draft was due January 15th, which I remember being on the phone with my agent and doing the math and being like, what now? And so it was both better because I knew that there was a book deal already signed and I knew it was, I knew sort of what the outcome would be for it. And worse because I didn't have all the time in the world and I in fact had a very, very tight deadline. And so, I think I learned a lot from the process of fumbling through a first book, and it somewhat streamlined the writing of the second. Although now I'm in the middle of my third and I realize I have no idea how to write a book and maybe never will.
No, I'm terrible. But will never change. Writing appears to be the only profession where the more you do it, the less you realize you know. I don't know why, but I apologize in advance.
Good to know.
That was also my next question. I'm so sorry. So the third book is an equally new adventure.
The third book is a totally new adventure. Yeah, it's slated to come out currently in spring of 2021. Mm-hmm. Right now, who knows what's going on with anything, including publishing. But a draft exists, and it is another thriller, but not a mystery for the first time for me. So it felt like starting new. I was a baby in my approach. And it's about 2 sort of globe-trotting best friends who accidentally kill a backpacker during their travels and cover it up. And it sort of is about the ensuing time and how it tests their friendships as the walls begin to close in on them, etc. So it's tentatively called The Visitors. Hopefully we'll be doing this a year from now. Actually, hopefully we'll be doing this in person.
Hopefully
in LA.
Person. Hopefully in person. Yes, that was actually answers a little bit of my next question. Is you travel a lot for your work as well outside of writing books. You're a journalist. How much of your work is inspired by your travel? And I'm guessing this new book is a little bit.
Right. So the new book, more so than most, I had the idea. I can see my friend Jennifer, and I was on a vacation with her when I had the idea for the new book. And so part of it is very much set like exactly where we stayed. And it draws on a lot of my travel writing background. Mm-hmm. But I would say the first 2 books, while they don't explicitly relate to my travel writing, what I discovered when I was writing The Herd in 3 completely feral, insane months was that I had canceled all my trips. As soon as I got the book contract, it was like, forget it. I don't have time. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to sit in my studio apartment and I'm going to write. And I had 1 trip in the middle of it that I couldn't cancel. It was already booked. And so I was writing and, having the very normal feelings of like, I hate this and this is terrible. And like, I'm going to have to call my editor and cancel the whole thing. Yeah. And then I left for this trip and I went to Fiji and Auckland, New Zealand. Amazing trip. And within like 2 days of arriving in a new country, I just had so many ideas. It was just like, I was suddenly firing on all cylinders again. And all of these plot puzzles that I'd been so stymied by, like, just suddenly made sense. And that was a big aha moment of like, oh, like I need to travel to be creative. I need to travel to like just shunt my brain down a different track and be able to think about things differently. And so my cat just very gracefully fell. Nobody saw Moni, you're fine. And so, this time around, as I was working on The Visitors, I like baked a trip into it and spent 3 weeks in Mexico. And as I hoped, it was very, very inspiring. And so I encourage anyone who is working on a creative project, if you can, like book in just a few days away, even if it's just an hour or 2 away, because it's so, so good for creativity.
Yeah, me too. I do that too. I'm very excited. I have one more question and then I'm going to hand it over to a Q&A. So everyone get ready with your questions for the chat box. My last question is, you've written 2 thrillers so far. You're working on a 3rd thriller without the mystery element. Is there another genre you would like to try that we can expect to see from Andrea Bartz, master of feminist thrillers?
I mean, I am the master of feminist thrillers. You know, I haven't discussed it with my agent or editor, so they're probably on this call, and I can't see you right now, so I won't know if you guys freak out. But no, there's other genres I very, very much want to write in. Ironically, I've always wanted to write apocalyptic fiction. Right now, that doesn't seem like the best idea.
Not for now. Not for now.
Not right now. I would really love to write horror, feminist horror. That is a genre that I would love to get into, and just basically like the darker and creepier I can go.
Nice.
And then, yeah, sort of like a soft sci-fi in the sci-fi / dystopian or futuristic sense is definitely intriguing to me as well. So we'll see. The plan is to write thrillers as long as they're going to allow me to continue writing thrillers. And then once I have some clout, I will be pushing back with some ideas that will probably surprise Hillary and Alexandra. Hi, guys.
It's a good plan. It sounds like a good plan to me. So does anyone have any questions for Andy? Oh, we do. We already have one right here from Megan Brown. What is your dream casting for The Herd if it were a movie or a miniseries?
This is so hard because
I'm so sorry. I know.
Thanks a lot, Megan.
It's such a good question, Megan. I'm so pleased that you got it in. But it's a hard one.
You probably don't want to watch me sit here and like try to come up with names, because to me, I really know what they look like. Like I really clearly see them in my mind. And so it's hard to think of, oh, Mona might make a pass by.
Mona Bomb.
Little Mona Bomb, little Mona Butt. So it's hard for me to think of them, but I will say there's this amazing bookstagrammer, Garrett Indeed Reads, and he puts together these like beautiful castings after he finishes a book, and he suggested Blake Lively for Eleanor, and I think that is brilliant. Like, give the woman a hair dye, some brown hair dye, and like sign me up. So I'll just say that and pass.
Yeah, I think it's a good exercise for everyone else to play with, right? Like, who would you like to see as your cast? I always like people to tell me who they would like to see as their cast, because it tells you a lot about your writing. It tells you who people see. So I think we want to hear from you, Megan. Who would you cast, Megan?
Who would you cast? I have a good friend, Kat Polardi, who is an actress, a college friend, and I can't see everyone on this right now, but she texted me and was like, "Ooh, I want to play." She said, "I want to play Mickey in the TV version." I started laughing and I was like, "Oh, I was kind of hearing you as Katie's voice, like as I was writing it. So I don't see you as a Mickey at all." So
people never see themselves. People never see themselves.
That's true.
That's a fact. That's a fact. We have a bunch more questions. So Ashley M says, as a New Yorker, I love that both your books are set in NYC. How much does the setting in NYC affect your story?
So the third book is the character's from Milwaukee, and her best friend lives in Sydney, Australia, and it takes place sort of all over the world. And so just give me it's just saying internet unstable. So give me a wave if I, stop.
I still hear you right now. We're good.
Okay, great. So I just think New York, the reason that I'm so inspired by it is that New York has this incredible sense of, especially right now when I can't go outside, but it has this amazing feeling of like when you walk out of your door, anything could happen and you could bump into anyone. And especially because it's such a difficult city, no one is here accidentally. You're here because like you're ambitious and like there's some, you have a dream that you hold on to really tight. And so pretty much anyone you chat with in a bar, like it's going to be pretty interesting and intelligent and hardworking in order to make it here. And it also means that people are very respectful of one another's, goals and dreams as well, in a way that I haven't found in another city. Nobody like makes fun of you if you say you're working on a novel. Instead, it's, back before you're published. Instead, it's much more like, oh, like I have a friend who did that. You should talk to her. Let me connect you. And so I feel like it's a city of assisted serendipity. And because we're all on top of each other, there's just a lot of like interactions. And so I think that makes it great for thrillers.
Mm-hmm. Carson Everett has a question, which is, and this is, I'm going to just preempt it, Carson, by saying this is a very difficult question right now. But what, if anything, are you currently reading? And I really appreciate that he said, if anything, because I know a lot of us are really struggling with our attention span. Do you have any fantastic quarantine recommendations? And I'm going to add into that, what is your go-to comfort read? Do you have a comfort read that you come back to?
Wow. Okay, that was a lot of questions in one.
It was, sorry.
And so, no, I'll try to keep it tight because I can see the questions like piling up. So I was just saying, okay, I'm going to make this tight. I'm having trouble reading, if I'm being honest, but Angie Kim has this beautiful book called Miracle Creek that's about to come out in paperback. You can get the hardcover now, or the ebook, or the audiobook. It's an amazing courtroom thriller that's very character driven. And quarantine reads, the other question was, like comfort reads. I always love sinking into, what are some books I always love sinking into? Like early Jeffrey Eugenides really does a trick for me, like Virgin Suicides, or Middlesex. Feels very soothing. Really, any Margaret Atwood. I just ordered the Testaments because for some reason I hadn't bought it yet, and I watched the documentary, which is great, on Hulu about her yesterday. Yeah. And I was like, I should really order that. So yeah, just something like beautiful and all-consuming.
I love that Jeffrey Eugenides is your comfort read, and I am currently on a reread of all my middle grade Sweet Dreams novels because it's the only thing that my brain is accepting. It's like, oh, the 16-year-old is totally going to make out with this other 16-year-old, and that's the end. And that's about where I'm at.
My brain's not accepting anything right now. So like, just everyone, I'm watching a lot of bad television, and that's fine. We're all doing our best.
That feels right. Yes, I really good. Cheers to that. Cheers to Tiger King, who came to us when we didn't even know we needed him.
Yes, Tiger King.
That's good. I know we are at the time limit that we said we were going to run to. Are we okay to finish up with a couple more questions, or do we need to wrap up?
No, I can be really fast.
You can take two more. Take two more.
Keep going. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so one was the question for me, which I feel terrible about answering, but Megan, and then I'm going to answer it because I put Megan on the spot with her casting. She just asked me how I prepped for this and how I prepare questions for another author. With Andy, it was so easy because I loved this book. I really genuinely loved this book. And I had a ton of questions. I have a ton of questions about the first book, but they are for private time because I was there during that time, living through it.
2009.
Yeah, you don't want to hear
time.
Questions. What a time. What a time to barely be alive. What a time. But yeah, it was really easy to do this just because I had so many questions. This book is so rich. I've read some reviews that say it's such a page turner, it's such an easy read, and that's true, but it also raises so many questions and creates so much conflict with its characters that it really just, I could talk to you all night about very specific questions that you would find ultimately incredibly tedious, and I won't. But yeah, it was really easy for questions with this. Another question we have from Anna Maltby says, I'm just going to read this verbatim. Aside from the grimace emoji tweet when the book was announced, any peeps from Ms. Gelman? Also, not to be a creep, but we would like to see your book party dress if that's at all possible.
Oh, okay. That's
not
fair.
For me, but I would too.
I'll answer first, and then I'll do a quick. Yeah, because I guess you can only see shoulders.
I mean, that's very good shoulders.
Yes, they're full on shoulder pads. The only response that we ever got from them was the emoji. And actually, rumor is that I was supposed to do an event with the Epilogue Project, which is this like awesome women's book club in New York. And I don't know, but they were like, we're going to talk to the wing and see if they want to do it. And then we didn't hear anything. And then we heard it's going to be at this hotel. Aren't you excited? So I don't know. Am I starting rumors when I don't actually know what I'm talking about? Yes. And the dress. Okay.
Let's see.
Can I see myself as I do this? So it has this like amazing, crazy sweetheart neckline. And then, wait, I'm wearing headphones. And then it's this amazing dress. I wish you could all see it. And then it's got this like bizarro thing on it. It has a really high slit that I'm not going to show you. So yeah, that's really the biggest loss of all of this pandemic, that I didn't get to wear this dress. And you guys didn't get to see it live.
Truly. But you know, you've got something to wear when you go out for groceries now. So
it's true. This will be my COVID outfit, like for foreseeable future.
I do feel like I am an inch away from Miss Havishaming my wedding dress back out and just being like, you know what? It's been a while. Let's get it out.
Have like a formal pizza night. Why not?
Yeah. I think it would be great. Thank you so much, everyone. That is all of our questions. So thank you so much to Andrea Bartz for her fabulous novel, The Herd, and for answering my questions and your questions. I'm going to hand back over now. But yeah, thank you so much, Andy. This is awesome.
Thank you, Lindsey.